Have you ever really stopped to consider how the exact same major historical event can be remembered in, well, profoundly different ways? It really depends entirely on who's doing the telling, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It goes beyond just simple perspective. It digs right into the core of national memory, national identity even.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're embarking on a deep dive into one such moment, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. This wasn't just, another conflict. It was truly foundational.
It really was. It laid the groundwork for decades of conflict that followed, and honestly, it continues to shape geopolitics in the Middle East right up to this minute.
What's really fascinating here, and I think what makes this deep dive so important, is seeing how this single conflict is viewed through these two starkly distinct lenses.
Right. For Israelis, it's absolutely etched in their collective memory as the War of Independence. The struggle that secured their nation's very existence against overwhelming
That's
odds.
for Palestinians.
For Palestinians, it's the Nakba, an Arabic word. It means the catastrophe. It represents this profound rupture, mass displacement, the loss of a homeland.
And understanding both of these narratives, these deeply held, often frankly agonizing narratives, is just vital. It's the only way to grasp its lasting impact.
Exactly. It's not just history from textbooks. It's an ongoing, lived reality for so many people.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to carefully sift through the sources you've provided. We want to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights.
Sort of a shortcut, maybe.
Yeah, think of it like that. A shortcut to becoming truly well-informed on what is an incredibly complex and, let's be honest, emotionally charged topic. We're going to present the facts as they appear in the material.
Critically, without taking side.
Without taking sides. The goal is to help you understand the multiple perspectives, often conflicting views at play here, to guide you through what can feel like a historical maze sometimes.
Precisely. We'll explore the timeline, we'll dig into the motivations, the actions of the key players involved, and really unpack the profound consequences, the ones that still resonate today.
And we're committed to giving balanced representation, right, based on the sources.
Exactly, as presented in the source material, focusing not just on, what happened in sequence, but crucially, on why these events matter so deeply to so many people, even after all this time.
Connecting the dots, past actions, present realities.
That's the aim.
Okay, so let's start digging in. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How a formal war, the one that officially starts in May 1948, was actually just the explosive endpoint of a civil conflict.
Yeah, a conflict that had already been simmering, really boiling, for months.
Our sources are pretty clear on this. The fuse was lit much earlier, almost immediately after a really significant decision by the still pretty new United Nations.
Indeed. The UN Partition Plan, formerly Resolution 181, passed on November 29, 1947. That was the undeniable catalyst, the spark.
And for the Jewish community in Palestine, the Yishuv, as they were known.
Well, for the Yishuv, this is a moment of just unparalleled celebration.
Yeah.
Deep historical resonance. After centuries of dispersion and coming right after the Holocaust.
Unimaginable horror.
Right. So this international recognition, this proposed Jewish state, it felt like the culmination of the Zionist dream, a secure homeland finally seemingly within reach. The plan gave them a defined territory for their sovereignty. Fragmented, yes, but defined.
And this is the crucial other side. For Palestinian Arabs, that exact same plan. It was seen as a profound injustice, an existential threat, really.
Absolutely. Imagine, decades of struggle for self-determination in your own homeland,
Yeah.
a land you've inhabited for generations,
Only to see it partitioned.
by an international body,
Yes.
essentially without your consent.
Yeah.
Our sources really highlight their deep-seated resentment, particularly over the large scale of British-allowed Jewish immigration into Palestine over the preceding decades.
They saw that as fundamentally changing the game, didn't they? Altering the demographics, the politics, against their will.
Exactly. And the partition plan seemed to just cement that fear. It placed many Arab towns, villages, some quite large and historically significant, within the borders of the proposed Jewish state.
Which meant fundamentally altering their future, effectively dispossessing them of parts of their ancestral land.
That's a really crucial point. Think about Jaffa, for instance, a major Palestinian Arab city, a cultural hub, envisioned as just a small Arab enclave, totally surrounded by the Jewish state.
Or Haifa.
Haifa, too, another key Arab port city, also slated to become part of the Jewish territory. And the sheer demographics, that really underscores the Arab opposition.
You mentioned nearly half the population inside the proposed Jewish state's borders were actually Palestinian Arabs.
That's right, not Jewish. So this demographic reality, it just fueled this widespread sense of betrayal, a feeling that they were being sacrificed for international politics. It's a foundational piece of the Nakba narrative, this initial injustice.
So, okay, with that deeply felt grievance as the backdrop, it's maybe not surprising what happened next. December 1947, right after the UN vote.
Almost immediately, yeah. Palestinian Arabs initiated a campaign. Their stated goal was pretty clear: secure Arab rule over Arab towns and villages, and actively block the implementation of this plan they saw as illegitimate.
So that's the start, the undeniable beginning of the Civil War phase. A violent eruption, really, rooted in these competing claims to the land, these opposing visions for Palestine's future.
Yes, and that fragile moment of celebration on the Jewish side, it was shattered almost instantly. The very next morning, after the UN vote, November 30th,
What happened?
Arabs attacked a Jewish bus near Lod. 5 Jewish passengers were killed. And, this wasn't just an isolated incident. Attacks escalated dramatically throughout December.
So Arab forces started trying to take control.
They tried to expand control, yeah. Often operating on local initiatives, it seems, not really unified command, but definitely trying to prevent the Jewish state from actually taking root. This rapid slide from a political decision to widespread violence on the ground just shows the deep, immediate hostility the plan ignited.
But then there's the other side's reaction. What's truly remarkable, and our sources point this out, is the incredible motivation on the Jewish side, almost visceral.
You have to remember, many members of the Yishuv had either directly experienced or were very closely connected to the horrors of the Holocaust, the persecution in Europe.
A recent raw memory.
Absolutely. And that recent unimaginable tragedy instilled this almost existential determination. They had to defend their communities, secure this nascent state, whatever the cost.
And surprisingly, despite the Arab attacks escalating, despite the pressure, no Jewish village was actually destroyed or abandoned because of Arab aggression before May 1948.
That's what the sources indicate, yeah. It speaks volumes about their resilience, their organization, even as Arab forces did manage to choke vital supply lines.
It's like to Jerusalem.
And the Negev.
Exactly. Creating huge strategic and humanitarian pressure on those isolated communities.
So let's look at the dynamics then in this civil war phase. The sources suggest the Arab forces had some early advantages.
They did, on paper at least. A larger overall population to draw fighters from, often better access to resources, existing networks. Strategically, they often controlled the higher ground in contested areas.
Tactical benefits, ambushes, defense.
Right. But despite these apparent strengths, the Palestinian Arab offensive ultimately lacked something crucial, a coherent central command structure, and the consistent preparedness that really characterized the Jewish paramilitary forces, especially the Haganah.
So internal disunity, tactical disparity.
That seems to be key. It often led to Arab efforts being repelled, and then Jewish reprisals frequently resulted in significant Arab losses. This lack of centralized leadership among Palestinian Arabs really proved to be a critical weakness as things went on.
And we see specific incidents marking this period. Yes, clear examples. The first major offensive by the Haganah, the main, most organized Jewish force, happened December 12th. Balad al-Sheikh village near Haifa.
And then Lifta.
Lifta, yeah, January 1948. A Palestinian Arab village in West Jerusalem. It became one of the first Arab towns to be systematically depopulated. These early actions, sadly, set a grim precedent for the mass displacements that came later.
Okay, so fast forward a bit to April 1948. The British mandate is visibly crumbling. Their withdrawal is imminent. This period becomes critical.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah?
David Ben-Gurion, soon to be Israel's first prime minister, he saw this coming power vacuum. He organized a significant preemptive offensive.
Operation Nachshon.
That's the one. A strategic move designed to secure the area allotted to the Jewish state in the Partition Plan and, crucially, to open up that vital road to Jerusalem, which was under Arab blockade. It marked a shift, really, from defense to more proactive military moves by the Yishuv.
And this is where we get to some of the most controversial, devastating events of the Civil War phase.
Dear Yassin.
Yes. Our sources detail the attack by the Ergen Zwei Lumi and the Stern Gang. These were other Jewish paramilitary groups, separate from the mainstream Haganah.
Known for more aggressive tactics, sometimes called terrorists by the British.
Right. They rejected British authority, often used retaliatory violence. On April 9th, they attacked the Arab village of Deir Yassin. The sources state around 100 inhabitants were killed, men, women, children.
A massacre.
Widely condemned as a massacre, yes.
Right.
And it had an immediate, profound psychological impact. Just 4 days later, a chilling retaliation. Arabs ambushed a medical convoy, killed about 80 Jews, mostly doctors, nurses, on their way to the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem.
Horrific tit for tat, the brutality escalating.
Tragically, yes, and the news of Deir Yassin, whether accurate reports or exaggerated rumors, it spread like wildfire through Palestinian communities.
Instilling fear.
Panic.
Yeah.
Immense fear, pervasive panic. So, as Jewish forces, like the Haganah, continued their advance, taking control of mixed towns, Tiberias, Haifa, Safed.
All technically in the Jewish part of the partition plan?
Correct. As they took control, the sources consistently show Arabs fleeing these areas en masse, even though, in some cases, Jewish authorities reportedly urged them to stay.
But the fear overrode that, the fear of another Deir Yassin.
It seems so. The overwhelming fear, the perceived threat, often just took over, leading to widespread flight.
So by mid-May 1948, British withdrawing, Israel's declaration hours away. The scale of internal displacement is already massive.
Immense. Staggering. Sources estimate maybe 250,000 to 300,000 Palestinian Arabs had already left or been expelled from their homes by then.
The Palestinian Arab front inside Palestine had essentially collapsed.
Largely, yes. Communities vulnerable, towns and villages being depopulated, inhabitants scattered. And amidst all this chaos, this demographic upheaval, the British are packing up, leaving this huge power vacuum, a situation just ripe for full-scale war.
Okay, so the stage is set. May 14th, British withdrawal looming. Ben-Gurion declares the State of Israel.
And just as predicted, really, as publicly stated, the very next day, May 15th, the armies of 5 Arab states invade: Egypt, Transjordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon.
Not spontaneous, then.
Not at all. The Arab League had made this collective decision weeks earlier. It signaled a coordinated, though, as we'll see, ultimately fragmented military intervention.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, this is the moment this civil war really becomes international, a regional conflict.
Exactly. The Arab armies explicitly said they were fighting on behalf of the Palestinian Arabs. They saw themselves as protectors, intervening with the goal of preventing the Jewish state's creation, securing Arab control over all of Palestine as the mandate ended.
Framed as defensive, reclaiming stolen land.
That was the framing, yes.
Yeah.
And initially, these invading armies certainly had a clear advantage, in terms of conventional military hardware at least.
Modern artillery, armored vehicles, air support, things the new Israeli forces mostly lacked.
Right. The disparity was stark. Our sources say less than 2/3 of the Haganah fighters, the core of the soon-to-be IDF, were even armed at this point, let alone with heavy weapons. It put the new state in an incredibly precarious position right from the start.
But despite that huge difference in equipment, the initial weeks weren't a walkover for the Arab armies.
No, marked by intense fighting. The Arab forces did secure significant territory early on, though. They gained control of much of what would become the Gaza Strip, the West Bank. Crucially, the Old City of Jerusalem. Immense symbolic importance there.
And they pushed into the Negev, Galilee.
Yes, took areas there too, effectively creating land bridges between regions they saw as historically Arab-controlled.
The Jewish quarter in the Old City was taken.
By Transjordan's Arab Legion, May 28. And the sources note it was left largely in rubble. Synagogues, homes destroyed. A heartbreaking loss. Meanwhile, Egyptian forces managed to surround the Negev, the Jewish communities there, areas the UN plan had actually given to Israel.
So immense pressure from all sides. Which begs that question you raised. How did Israel, facing these odds, these disadvantages, manage to hold on, let alone eventually turn the tide?
It's a crucial question. And the answer involves a complex internal struggle that was happening at the same time.
Unifying their own forces.
Exactly. The huge challenge of merging these disparate Jewish paramilitary groups, Haganah, Irgun, Stern Gang, into one single national army, the IDF. Ben-Gurion, now Prime Minister and Defense Minister, faced an enormous task. These groups had their own commands, sometimes different political aims.
Bringing them under one roof was essential for the war effort.
Absolutely essential. And the sources highlight a really significant internal conflict during this early phase. It underscores the brutal challenges of building a state during a war.
The Al Khalina incident?
The Al Khalina incident, June 1948. A stark, tragic example. A ship arrived carrying arms and fighters for the Irgun. Ben-Gurion had ordered all arms go to the new IDF. He was determined to assert the IDF's sole authority.
So he ordered the IDF to stop it.
By force, if necessary. The confrontation that followed was tragic. 16 Irgun fighters, 3 IDF soldiers killed. It wasn't just a skirmish. It was this foundational, painful moment establishing the state's military hierarchy, the government's authority over independent militias.
Wow. So despite those internal struggles and the external pressure from invading armies, They still showed incredible resilience.
and ingenuity. They managed to hold the Arab forces back, stopping them from advancing further west beyond Jerusalem's old city, prevented a complete encirclement of Jewish West Jerusalem.
And they built that road, the Burma Road.
An extraordinary feat of wartime engineering, yes. Built quickly to supply their front lines in West Jerusalem, getting around the Arab legion's blockades. It ensured the survival of the Jewish communities there, a crucial strategic success.
Now looking at the Arab side again, initial advantages, but hampered by lack of unity.
Profoundly hampered. The sources are explicit. They never managed to mount a common, coordinated offensive across all fronts. This fragmented approach was a critical flaw. Undermined their effectiveness against an Israeli force that was rapidly unifying and getting better organized.
That disunity is a big part of the Nakba narrative too, isn't it? Seen as a failure of Arab leadership.
It is often viewed that way, yes. And it wasn't just battlefield coordination. Each Arab state involved had very different political goals for what Palestine should look like after the mandate.
Which led to mistrust, competing priorities.
Deep mistrust. For example, Jordan's ruler, Abdullah III, he had clear expansionist ambitions. He wanted Palestine's Arab towns, the West Bank, under his rule, a greater Transjordan.
And he opposed an independent Palestinian state, especially one led by his rival, the Mufti.
Strongly opposed. Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, was a prominent Palestinian nationalist, but his leadership was often divisive even among Arabs. Abdullah didn't want him in charge.
And Egypt.
Egypt was deeply wary of Jordan getting too powerful. So Egyptian military efforts were partly aimed at preventing a Jordanian takeover of large parts of Palestine.
So they were working at cross purposes.
Frequently, instead of a cohesive assault on Israel, resources and attention were diverted. Initial gains weren't consolidated. The overall strategy was compromised, giving Israel vital breathing room to regroup and eventually counterattack. #, the truces and turning tides. June 1948, July 1949.
Okay, so the first truce comes into effect June 11th. Sources say by then, much of the Arab forces' initial push had stalled.
Yeah, their capabilities, their momentum largely spent. They gained some ground, but offensive stalled, supply lines were stretched, reserves were low.
But for Israel, this truce UN brokered, initially 4 weeks, it was a lifeline.
Absolutely critical. A strategic pause that they used incredibly effectively to regroup and, crucially, rearm.
This is where we see that major shift in the balance of power.
Monumental shift, yeah. During this 28-day truce, Israel secured vital new arms shipments, especially from Czechoslovakia, fighter planes, tanks, artillery, part of this clandestine effort called Operation Belak.
Desperately needed modern weapons.
Desperately needed, and just as important, their manpower swelled dramatically. Tens of thousands of new Jewish migrants arrived, many Holocaust survivors. Plus, Jewish volunteers from abroad, the Mashal, bringing critical WWII military experience.
So this truce wasn't really a pause for them, it was a period of intense buildup.
Exactly. While the Arab armies largely failed to rearm or reorganize significantly, the IDF was consolidating, transforming, strengthening weapons stockpiles, boosting manpower with motivated recruits and experienced vets, refining organization under a more unified command.
Setting the stage for a dramatic shift when fighting resumed.
Fundamentally turning the tide. So when fighting restarts on July 8th, the whole dynamic on the ground has changed.
Arabs now mostly on the defensive.
Primarily, yeah. Reacting to Israeli initiatives. The newly strengthened, better equipped, more cohesive IDF launched a series of successful, coordinated offensives. Seized the initiative, showed their improved capabilities.
They took Lod and Ramla.
Right. Two significant Arab cities, strategically located between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And what's striking is these cities were actually inside the area proposed for the Arab state in the partition plan.
Showing Israel expanding beyond those initial UN lines.
Clearly. And at the same time, Operation Dekel in the north took parts of Galilee, also originally intended for the Arab state, further expanding Israeli control up there.
What about Nazareth? You mentioned that earlier.
Right. As the IDF advanced towards Jerusalem, they also secured the surrender of Nazareth, a city with a large Arab Christian population. The sources note this happened with surprisingly little resistance from the inhabitants, minimal bloodshed.
A strategic move, avoiding international backlash.
Seems likely. A careful approach, crucial given the global attention on holy sites, Christian populations. It showed a strategic awareness beyond just military goals.
Then, just 10 days later, July 18th, a second truce.
Another UN-mediated truce, yeah. Sources say despite occasional violations, skirmishes, this one largely held for about 3 months. Another period of relative calm, an opportunity, maybe, for diplomacy.
Were there diplomatic efforts during this time?
There were still desperate attempts to find a solution. Folk Bernadotte, the UN mediator, worked hard. In September, he proposed a revised peace plan.
What did it suggest?
Among other things, it offered the Negev Desert to the Arab side and suggested Jerusalem be put under UN control. An attempt, maybe, to create a more balanced division, appease Arab grievances, address international concerns about Jerusalem.
Did it gain any traction?
Virtually none. The sources state bluntly it was roundly rejected by all sides. Just highlights the deep mistrust, the maximalist positions, the existential stakes for both sides then. No one was willing to compromise on core claims.
And Bernadotte himself?
Tragically, he was assassinated by the Stern gang in Jerusalem shortly after presenting his plan. Further underscoring just how volatile things were, the lack of consensus, the extremism present, #check the final campaigns, and the new map. October 1948, July 1949. So that second truce, it ends abruptly. October 15th. Egyptians reportedly fired on an Israeli convoy.
Providing the trigger, the impetus for the IDF to launch new campaigns.
Exactly. New decisive campaigns aimed at consolidating gains, pushing back remaining Arab forces, securing defensible borders for the new state.
And these final campaigns were quick, impactful.
Very. First, Operation UF. A major offensive broke through Egyptian lines, regained access to the Negev in the south, which had been cut off.
Crucial southern region.
Crucial. Then, just 2 weeks later, Operation Hiram in the north pushed Arab forces out of Galilee entirely, secured that whole northern front, greatly expanding Israeli control there.
And a final push against Egypt.
Operation Horeb, end of December. Primarily targeted Egyptian forces in the south. These comprehensive, decisive campaigns really solidified Israel's control over key strategic areas, expanded its territory far beyond the original UN plan, marked the end of the major military phase.
January 7th, 1949. A ceasefire finally takes effect across all fronts, effectively ending the major fighting of the conventional war.
And the results for Israel were, well, profound. Hugely significant.
They'd survived.
Not just survived a full-scale war from multiple sides by established armies, but they'd succeeded in carving out positions, borders that were far more defensible than those originally allocated in the UN plan. A dramatic, largely unexpected outcome for where things stood in May 48.
And the territorial changes themselves were dramatic. By the time the ceasefire took hold, Israel controlled about 77% of former Mandate Palestine.
That's right. A substantial expansion from the 56% allocated in the original UN plan. A massive redrawing of the map, visually representing their wartime success.
And the formal end didn't come via a single peace treaty.
No, it came through a series of bilateral armistice agreements, signed individually over several months in 1949.
With Egypt first, then Lebanon, Transjordan, Syria.
Exactly. Egypt in February, Lebanon in March, Transjordan in April, and finally Syria in July 1949. These agreements slowly brought the official conflict to a close.
And crucially, these armistice agreements, they didn't just stop the fighting. They established the de facto borders.
The Green Line, as it became known.
Yeah.
Yes. And just as importantly, the borders of the West Bank, which came under Jordanian occupation, and the Gaza Strip under Egyptian occupation, those were also created and defined by these same treaties.
So the lines that still define so much of the conflict today were literally drawn in 1949 by these agreements.
That's correct. It's also worth noting the one exception. Israel and Iraq, they don't share a border, so they never signed an armistice. Technically, a state of war still exists between them. A quiet but significant detail.
Okay, we've covered the military campaigns, the strategic shifts, the map being redrawn, but we absolutely have to talk about the human cost. The profound, devastating human cost.
Yes. The sources give us stark numbers. It's crucial to remember this wasn't just about territory.
The sources report roughly 1% of both the Jewish and Palestinian Arab populations were killed during the conventional war.
That's the tragic estimate, yes. Symmetrical in percentage terms, devastating for both communities relative to their size then. Underscores the immense suffering on all sides.
Putting numbers to that, between 5,700 and 400 Jews killed. A huge loss for a tiny nascent state.
Huge. And between 10,000 and 15,000 Palestinian Arabs lost their lives. Also, around 1,400 Egyptian soldiers killed, hundreds more from Jordan, Iraq, Syria, dozens from Lebanon. The toll was widespread. Countless families, communities across the region impacted.
And beyond the deaths, the destruction and displacement for Palestinians was immense.
Immense, transformative, central to the Nakba narrative. From the start of the Civil War in late 47 to the end of the war in mid-49, more than 400 Palestinian Arab towns and villages were destroyed or depopulated.
It's wiped off the map.
Essentially, yes. Rendered uninhabitable, populations gone. This isn't just a statistic, it's the obliteration of communities, cultural heritage lost, a staggering change to the landscape.
And the number's even higher, over 500 if you include non-permanent settlements like Bedouin encampments.
That's what some sources specify, yes. It's almost unfathomable, a fundamental, irreversible change to Palestinian society, their connection to the land.
Before the war, nearly 1.4 million Arabs lived in Palestine. The conflict unleashed this mass exodus, the Nakba.
The catastrophe, yes. This mass displacement is the central defining feature of Palestinian collective memory of 1948.
And the estimates of how many were displaced vary?
They do vary somewhat,
Yeah.
from maybe 520,000 up to over 1 million in some accounts. But the general consensus among historians seems to be certainly more than 600,000 and likely over 700,000.
A population-level displacement, a sudden uprooting of a huge portion of a people.
Epic proportions, yes. And it happened both internally within historical Palestine and externally into neighboring countries.
Where do they go?
Internally, about 276,000 moved to the West Bank, which then came under Jordanian control. By 1949, the West Bank's population had swelled dramatically, absorbing this massive influx. More than half the pre-war Arab population of Palestine ended up living there.
Reshaping its demographics completely.
Completely. And another large group, maybe 160,000 to 190,000, fled to the Gaza Strip under Egyptian administration, creating those extremely dense refugee camps, which are still a major issue today.
But many left Palestine altogether.
Yes, a devastating outcome. More than 1/5 of Palestinian Arabs became refugees in neighboring countries, unsure of their future.
Where did they end up?
The numbers show the spread. Around 100,000 to Lebanon, another 100,000 to Jordan, maybe 75,000 to 90,000 to Syria. Smaller numbers, 7,000 to 10,000 to Egypt, about 4,000 to Iraq. It created an immediate humanitarian crisis across the region.
Straining resources, creating new challenges in those countries.
Absolutely, and the long-term impact, it's profound, still resonates today across generations.
Our sources mention UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees.
Yes, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. It began operations in 1950. Initially, about 500,000 Palestinians qualified for relief food, shelter, education, healthcare.
A mission that's tragically still vital today.
Still vital. And connecting this to the bigger picture, the crisis absolutely continues. Many original refugees and their descendants are still displaced, still registered with UNRWA. By the 2020s, that number had climbed to a staggering 6 million.
6 million.
6 million. It highlights the enduring humanitarian consequences of 1948, a profound legacy shaping regional politics, aid efforts, and the human lives of millions. Keeps the memory of the Nakba intensely alive. #HeldNightCheck.
So after diving this deep, what does it all mean for understanding the region now, for grasping the nuances of a conflict still so central to, well, global headlines?
We've seen how this war, 1948, truly existential for everyone involved.
Yeah.
How it's remembered so differently.
Simultaneously, Israel's war of independence, securing the nation's right to exist, and for Palestinians, the Nakba, the catastrophe, mass displacement, loss of homeland.
It's not just two sides of one coin, is it? It's like two fundamentally different experiences, both absolutely real, both deeply etched into national and personal memory, yet completely intertwined.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows us history is rarely, if ever, a single straightforward story.
The 1948 war is such a powerful example, maybe one of the most poignant, how the exact same events get experienced, interpreted, enshrined in memory so differently, creating these parallel yet interconnected historical narratives.
Narratives that continue to inform identities today, political positions, deep-seated grievances.
On both sides, absolutely. The formal fighting ended January 7th, 1949. Armistice agreements were signed. But the consequences.
Especially the displacement of hundreds of thousands, the destruction of hundreds of villages, the drawing of those new de facto borders.
They continue to shape the region. You can hear the echoes in every major development, every political debate, every human story coming out of there, even now.
Which really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? A question perhaps for you, the listener, as you reflect on all this.
How do these dual narratives, both so deeply felt, both so historically significant, how do they continue to influence current events? How do they shape perceptions, impact the ongoing, often incredibly fraught path towards peace in the Middle East?
Understanding this foundational conflict, really grappling with its complexity, seeing both perspectives.
It's absolutely essential. For anyone trying to make sense of the region today, its echoes are just everywhere.